There we go. Hi everyone, Adrian Gerald here. Welcome to the Global Leadership Platform. And this is, of course, our Global Leadership Conversation. Going across the world, speaking to experts, influencers, and asking them what they think we should do about this global leadership crisis. So I'm very excited. In the last 2 days, I've spoken to people from Sudan to the US, and now Nick Christelis in South Africa. I mean, Nick Christelis he's been in the space of strategy, leadership consulting for many, many years. He's a coach, author, speaker, and certainly if you're on Twitter, then he influences a lot of leaders there. Nick Christelis, welcome.
Thank you, Adrian. It's a pleasure to talk to you about a topic that is so big on my heart and something I'm so passionate about.
So Nick, I usually ask 2 questions. So people that are going to more and more follow this Global Leadership Conversation 1 knows that I ask 2 questions, but I'm going to add one in the beginning, and probably with all the interviews hereafter, and that is, how would you describe the global leadership crisis? How do we define it? We all agree there is some form of crisis, and again, I always say pockets of excellence. That's what gives us hope. But how would you describe it?
Okay, I would describe the crisis as follows. I think what has happened is the world has become increasingly more and more interdependent. Barriers break down, walls break down. Technology has made it easy to communicate across wide distances. So the world has become a hell of a lot smaller, number one. And in addition to that, if you look at that, that is the platform on which a value system has emerged, which in its simplest forms can be defined as win-win. That is the value system that the world is living by today. If you want an interdependent reality, you've got to go for a value system that is win-win. And when you've got a value system that's win-win, it means that people are not prepared to be on the losing end of any kind of a situation or a deal or a life. There's equality for all. And as you know, the world is getting increasingly more and less equal, with a few people at the top growing and driving wealth, and the people at the bottom are really battling because of and it's partly because of technology, because technology as such has, contrary to what people might think, it's added a lot of cost into our systems and into our lives. And it makes it even more and more expensive for people to survive. So you've got this dissatisfaction. Now, if you look at history, when do great leaders emerge in history? They emerge either in a time of crisis, when the world is in crisis, which it is now, and I could expand on what I've just said, but I don't want to say much more on that. I think it's clearly understood. Or alternatively, leaders emerge when the world is comfortable and leaders can see a vision that is a better future than this comfort zone. And so leaders shatter the status quo, challenge the boundaries, challenge what we are doing, create the crisis, but then we need leaders to get us through the crisis. We are living in a crisis. The simplest way to put it, this is not a freeway system that we're living in anymore. As complicated as a freeway system gets, this is a jungle. And you can manage a freeway system. A jungle needs leadership. So that is the crisis. That's how I see the crisis. We're in a jungle. We need leadership to get us through this.
Yeah, and as you said earlier, even before we started recording, you were describing to me exactly how technology has impacted the world and the access to knowledge and the speed. And there's just so much we can just talk about that, isn't there? We all know the world has changed tremendously. So we're saying leaders are struggling with that. They're struggling with the mindset of followers, that followers want more because of the win-win principle that you mentioned. They're struggling with the fact that they can see when their leaders aren't acting as they say they will. There's so much we can talk about. Okay, but in essence, thanks for defining the leadership crisis. Then the first question, which we're familiar with, is what is the most important attribute or quality that we need to develop in leaders if we are going to turn around this global leadership crisis?
All right. My answer is going to also expand on the crisis. Okay, so it will elaborate a bit on the crisis as well as looking towards where the solution lies. And it can be best described by the writings of a gentleman called Cass, who was a religious scholar in the 80s, and it has surfaced around the world. His theories have surfaced around the world right now because of game theory being very popular around the world with all these games that are played. Now, he essentially said that we have two types of games in life. You have finite games and you have infinite games. Now, a finite game is defined as a game where there are known and unknown, there are known players. Imagine a football game or a rugby game or a cricket game. There are known players. There are accepted rules by everybody. There's a clear boundaries around it. And the objective of the game is to win. Right? And we all play by the rules. You break the rules, the ref blows the whistle. And when the 90 minutes is up or the 80 minutes is up, the whistle goes to the end of the game. It's finite. It's a finite game. Okay. Yeah. Somebody wins, somebody loses. An infinite game. The players are known, both known and unknown. Right? The rules are flexible. And the objective of the game is to sustain the game, to stay in the game, not to win or lose. Now, I'll give you an example. Love. Now, you can translate leadership for love, but let's use love because most people will relate to that. Love. Love is an infinite game. The players are known and unknown. The rules change. The objective of the game is to stay in the game and to sustain it, not to win or lose. Because when you win or lose, it causes conflict, dissatisfaction, right? And emotional upheaval when people lose. So it's not about winning and losing. It's about staying in the game, sustaining the game. Now, when you get to finite game players playing against each other, that system is quite stable because both are playing to win.
Yeah.
Okay, somebody wins and loses, though they maybe accept it, they maybe don't accept it, but the system is stable. When you get an infinite game against an infinite game, the system is stable because nobody wins in that case. A very good example, the Cold War between the East and the West. That was an infinite game. There's no time limit, there's no score, there's nothing like a finite game in it. And why did the game end? Because an infinite game like love or leadership or business, we could debate, is it a finite or an infinite game? And there's the key question, right? An infinite game ends when one of the players drops out of the system because they don't have the wherewithal to continue anymore. It's not that not that America won. Russia dropped out of the game, okay, because they never had the wherewithal or the resources to do it. So, but when you get a finite game and an infinite game, right, it can be chaotic, problematical, and full of conflict, right? Now, business, ask ourselves the question, is business a finite game, or is democracy a finite game, or is it an infinite game? It's infinite, okay? It's ongoing. There's no score line. How do you know we've reached democracy, or we've reached leadership, or we've reached love? We don't know. The horizon keeps moving. It's infinite. We just got to play in order to sustain the game. Right? Now, if you look at business today, let me just say one more thing. It's possible to play a finite game inside an infinite game. So here we've got this big infinite game of business. The idea being to sustain the game and to continue being a player, to be in the game. That's the objective, right? Then we have these finite games within that, which are unfortunately boundaried usually in 12-month periods with scores and incentives and bonuses, and you either win or you don't win, right? And at the end of the year, the time is up. It doesn't matter how well you played or whether you got 2% to the score line, close to the score line. The whistle went, the game is over. You can't go to the ref in a rugby match and say, listen, man, can't you just give us another 10 minutes? We're on our way here. Yeah, we're almost there. We're almost going to make it. You can't do that. The game is over. Somebody wins and somebody loses, right? Now, leaders today have got to understand that the prime game is the infinite game, which never ends. And finite games, like this year's budget, like BEE scores, like anything that's measurable has got a target, okay, has to happen within an infinite game and not the other way around. Now, most leaders today kid themselves. They're playing finite games. And then because we're talking about green and sustainability and engagement and BEE, and then they try to take these infinite games and put them inside a finite game. No, the priority is, and this is the wake-up call, right? The priority is, and let me come back to love, is my love and my relationship with my wife. Priority number one, it's an infinite game. When I realized that this idea of an infinite game some years ago, and I took the win-lose out of the relationship, as good as it was, skyrocketed. There's no win-lose. It's not feeling that I've won this battle or this argument or I've lost or I'm at a disadvantage here. Okay. Am I making a point?
Yeah, powerful point, yeah.
Yeah, so the thing is this, that once you get rid of the win-lose,
yeah,
you allow the infinite game to continue, and then you've got to worry about sustaining the game. Now, leaders today have got to understand, they've got to balance out. They've got to first and foremost be playing an infinite game.
Yeah.
First and foremost. Now, little finite games happen in this infinite game, and the infinite game will always be a reference point to everything that you do in a finite game, not the other way around.
Yeah.
Can I tell you something? I was doing some research for a project and for a client, and it caused me to look at apartheid era political deaths. From time of inception of apartheid to the time apartheid went, there were, and I don't know the exact number, but it was like 30,000 political deaths. Right? There were a number of battles between the apartheid regime and the ANC at that time, the freedom fighters. Without exception, those were finite battles, finite games. Without exception, the government won every single battle.
Yes, but they lost.
They lost the war. They lost. Why? Because the ANC at that time were playing an infinite game. It was about democracy. There wasn't a score line. There wasn't a deadline. There wasn't a budget. It wasn't. That is all that drove them. The rules were flexible. The players were known and unknown, and they needed to fight to stay in the game, which they did. Unfortunately, now the priorities gone away from, as I see it through my eyes, from an infinite game of building a sustainable country for all its peoples to the finite games that are being played internally.
Sure. Okay, Nick, I mean, before we...
Sorry, can I just make one point? Okay, because I've spoken to leaders about this. Sorry, Adrian. I've spoken to leaders about this. They say, yes, but we do worry about, we always see the big picture. An infinite game is not the big picture. A big picture is merely a 5-year version of where you're going to be today. Take today's budget, today's sales, today's size of company projected. That's the big picture. Not the big picture is this game we are in and how do we play to sustain it for all players concerned. And until the world grapples with that all players are part of the game and see it as the game is going to continue, we will have endless problems.
I know this might be a small version of what you're saying, but the truth is I seem to recall that the past year we had a motor vehicle company and we were fighting to win against the other motor vehicle company sort of thing. And now you look at these big companies just trying to survive trying to stay in the game rather than trying to beat another. Maybe they're still trying a little bit of that, but I get the impression it's more one of, we've got to stay in this game. It's about surviving. It's about...
You're 100% right. Listen to the language of business. We got to beat the competition. We got to be number one. That is not an infinite game. You need to drop that. The best companies are aware of the competition. You need to be aware to plan your strategy, etc., etc. But we're not here to beat the competition. I mean, motor vehicle dealer A is not going to kill motor vehicle dealer B, right? Right. What we need to do is we need to be aware of the competition, but we need to play in a way that is going to sustain us in this game called business. Get the stats out on how many businesses die after a while, and why do they die? Not because they necessarily went insolvent. They die because they lost the wherewithal to continue playing the game, and some of that might have been resources. That is why there are companies today that have scrapped this idea of a profit. Because a profit is like steeped in win-lose, greed. We got to make more profit. No, I read about companies that have turned that now into a freedom number. What's our freedom number for this year? It's 10 million. Okay. Why do we need to get to that 10 million? Because it buys us freedom in this game. It allows us to continue. It gives us choices. We can move forward. We're buying our freedom.
Okay. So, Nick, powerful principle. I think before I ask you my final question, let's just define further. So in my mind, I must still be clear. What is the top quality then that we need to develop in leaders? Is it the ability to define the infinite game? Is it the ability to play that infinite game? What's the quality you put at the top of the list there?
Firstly, they've got to understand, have a mindset, and understand the idea of an infinite game, right? And they've got to get their priorities right. Secondly, then there's they move us forward because an infinite game is moving towards an ever receding horizon, and there's that movement that leaders take us going forward. But it's a movement while there's the finite games of budgets, etc. There's this movement, constant movement towards this ever receding horizon. Call it love, call it leadership, call it health, call it democracy. You never get there. There's no score line. The minute you make a score out of it, that is why I keep saying to people, you can't measure leadership. How do you measure love? How do you measure democracy? How do you measure leadership? You don't. It's a journey.
Okay. How do we develop that? How do we develop this quality in leaders? It doesn't sound like something you can develop.
No, but it's like anything else. People. There's a wonderful saying that says people will change when they see the light or when they feel the heat. I believe a lot of well-intentioned, potentially authentic leaders can't exercise the leadership they would like to, simply because they're just not quite aware of this point that I've described. So I think the starting point to build a tidal wave eventually of movement down this road is to continue having dialogues with the objective of increasing the awareness. Is that we've got to balance these things out. I mean, if you look at I seem to remember the statistics. If you look at Denmark, senior executives earn 28 times that of the lower rung workers. If you look at the USA, it's 480 times. You know what I mean? That's they're playing finite games. It's a win-lose. So we've got to create this awareness for a start. Once you create the awareness, we will find ways and means of moving it forward. Because this is a jungle. It's not a freeway.
Okay. So it's an aha moment. We have to create aha moments, and I'm guessing that these kind of conversations, real breakthrough conversations, is the start.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that's part of the Global Leadership Platform. The purpose is now and in the future, and this #Global Leadership Conversation One journey is to get us have conversations all over the world about the same theme. And hopefully we can take that further on technology and other methods. Christelis, all the way from Johannesburg, South Africa. I've let us go on longer because of the aha moment here. It's a powerful principle. Just tell us 1 second. I ask all the leaders this. Give something interesting about Johannesburg, and why should people visit it when they're in South Africa?
Why should you visit it? Because I think that Johannesburg represents the challenge in a small country, represents the challenge that in some way or format the whole world is facing today, this leadership crisis. And I get highly excited about being here because I'm learning all the time. I'm seeing what works. I'm seeing what doesn't work. So if you want to see an infinite game that's called democracy, right, where the players are known and unknown, where the rules are changeable, but in reality where you got to try and achieve this objective of democracy rather than a win-lose situation, come to Johannesburg. It's vibrant, it's exciting, it has got energy. I wake up every day waiting to see what I can learn from what is happening in the country.
Wonderful answer. Thank you so much. Nick Christelis, author, coach, strategist, expert, and much more. Thank you for joining us on the Global Leadership Platform. Really appreciate it.
Adrian, always an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and I love what you're doing.
Thank you so much.